The War of the Pacific quarter. There's that.
Yeah, see, so they did it for each one of the 5 quarters. They did it for each one of the 5 quarters for 2019. Okay, this one is as you can see, the War in the Pacific. So this is the National Parks quarter, and this is the War in the Pacific coin that they did. They have a U.S. War Memorial in the Pacific that you have right there. And if you go on the other side of the coin, there it is, War, and it's on Guam. I mean, I think everybody who's familiar with American history is familiar with Guam. Mm-hmm. So they have a museum there in Guam that is the War in the Pacific. It's a U.S. territory, if you will. And so same situation. It's one of these West Point minted coins. It is one of these coins that were found. It is, once again, early discovery. It's $99. It's almost half price. Now, here's the thing. At $179.95, it was the lowest price in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. In Mint State 67, NGCs, PCGS are $400, $500, $600. There are no Mint State 68, 69s, or 70s that I'm aware of. If they would, they'd be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So not only do we have these phenomenally rare coins that were never sold individually by the United States government, you had to find them, but you have them in the highest available grade, in early discovery. Okay, so they came out in the first 30 days. So they came out in the first 30 days that these coins were officially released from the United States Mint. So you've got the early discovery. You've got the incredible $179.95 was an amazing price.
Yeah.
For this day only, $99, I can tell you that's not coming back. We're never going to do this again in prime time at $99.95
yep.
for early discovery. So what you've got is an amazing opportunity. Like I said, we have about 10 dozen of each one of these coins. We're going to spend 2 or 3 minutes on several of these to give you that opportunity to get one of the rarest coins. Like I said, these were not sold. You literally had to find these
right.
and change.
Right, like a treasure chest.
Find a coin and change that grades Mint State 67, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, like a treasure hunt. I mean, it was like the national treasure hunt.
Right, and the highest known grade of this coin in Mint State 67. To my knowledge, there's no Mint State 68s. I know there's no Mint State 69s. I know there's no Mint State 70s. There may have been in the last month or so a Mint State 68 graded. I'm assuming that would be a $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 coin, something
really?
Along those lines.
Oh, are you what?
Yeah, for a Mint State 68 would be at least probably a $5,000 coin. I'm not aware of one that exists.
Okay.
So it could be 20,000. If there's one, it's worth 50,000. But I know in terms of Mint State 67, you're not going to find it for less than $99.95. That's the special opportunity that you have here.
Right. Oh my goodness. Well, there's 72 left. There's only 2 hours left to get this price. I think they'll be gone in 2 hours, but I'm just letting you know that it is a this day only. $99.95. Even then, though, we're doing flex pay. So $33.32 to get home this coin. And I remember, Mike, when we first, heard about the national, kind of treasure hunt to kind of get Americans interested in coin collecting. That seems like a more innocent time now that we, that we think, because that was before all this craziness.
Trying to get kids to start looking through their change again to get that W or West Point Mint, and still continue to do that. Mm-hmm. Even in really poor condition, they're basically worth $20.